Alright, hello there, thrill seekers. That was a little piece of the song Rebel Rouser by Dwayne Eddy, and I'm playing that in honor of this record I found yesterday at Penrose Record Room in Riverside, California for $26. Why is that so amazing? Because it's signed by Dwayne Eddy himself, who just passed away last year. I have no idea why they were selling this for $26. Anyway, I see it selling for hundreds of dollars on eBay. If you can find a signed copy. So that was pretty lucky. All right, so today I wanted to revisit, maybe I hope for the last time, the White Lotus, the TV show White Lotus, which I started off the week talking about 2 videos ago. And in that video, I mentioned that there is a scene in which the supposed Buddhist master, or they keep calling him a monk, but he seems to be a master of some sort. The show is set in Thailand, in case you didn't watch the other videos, and it has a kind of a Buddhist-y theme to it, and this is what the show's showrunner intended. And in the show, the Buddhist master says something like, he's asked what happens after we die, and he says something to the effect of, when we are born, we are like a drop thrown upward out of the ocean, flying upward, and then we get older and we start to descend downward, and when we die, we are re-entering the great ocean of consciousness, and it's a happy return. Something to that effect. And I said in the video that, yeah, maybe Dogen would have some quibbles with that because he kind of denies that idea in Bendoa, but I didn't want to go there at that time because the video was already too long. Well, I'm going to go there, and hopefully this video won't be too long because I'm just going to try to pick up one particular idea. The passage I am talking about appears, as I think I just said, in Bendoa, which is, let me see, the version I'm going to read from is called On the Endeavor of the Way. I'm going to read to you from the Kazuaki Tanahashi translation rather than my teacher's translation, which I'm going to talk about in a second, because this version makes it more clear the problem with the whole ocean of enlightenment thing. This is a Q&A section. In my book, Don't Be a Jerk, I called this chapter by Dogen, Dogen's Q&A, or Dogen's FAQ. Yeah, I think I called it Dogen's FAQ. Anyway, because the last section of the piece is a little Q&A with an unknown person asking Dogen a lot of questions. And here's what the questioner asks. Okay. The questioner says, and this is a bit long, so apologies in advance. One master said, "Do not grieve over birth and death." And it's given, birth is also life, so life and death we could also, because the same word is used in Japanese. There is an immediate way to be free from birth and death, namely to know the principle that the nature of mind is permanent. It, the principle, means that because this body is already alive, it will eventually die, but the mind nature will not perish. You should recognize that mind nature exists within your body and is not affected by birth and death. It is its inherent nature. The body is a temporary form. It dies here and is born there, and is not fixed. Mind is permanent. It does not change through the past, future, or present. To understand this is to be free from birth and death. If you understand this principle, you become free from ordinary birth and death and enter into the ocean of mind nature when your body perishes. That's the point. That's the part I wanted you to hear. When you flow into the ocean of nature, you attain the wondrous virtue of all Buddha Tathagatas. Even though you realize this now, because your body is formed as a result of deluded actions from past lives, you are not the same as all sages. If you do not recognize this principle, you will go around in birth and death forever. Therefore, you should listen to understand that mind nature is permanent, etc., etc. And the person asking the question says, does such a statement as this accord with the path of all Buddhas and ancestors? And Dogen answers, the view you have mentioned is not at all the Buddha Dharma, but rather the view of Shrenika, an outsider who says, and basically he kind of restates the same thing. And in order to make this maybe a little easier, I want to now take up this book, which is one that is kind of interesting. It came out about 2 years ago. I think Peter Roca I'm sure Peter Roca put this together because I looked it up. Peter Roca is a student of Nishijima Roshi who was ordained at the same time I was. He's an Irish fellow who still lives in Japan. And he put out this book called A Talk on Pursuing the Truth by Gudo Nishijima, because all the words except for the intro are Gudo Nishijima and not Peter Roca, but he put the book together. And this contains one of, or maybe it's a compilation of lectures, I'm not sure, but it's in the form of a lecture by Nishijima Roshi on Bendoa. The reason I didn't read from the Nishijima Roshi version at the beginning is because Nishijima and Mike Cross gave it a different translation, which I'm not sure why, because as I've said often, the Nishijima Cross version of Shobo Genzo tends to be very, very close to the Japanese original, whereas the Tanahashi version tends to be a bit interpretive. In this case, though, this is one of the exceptions that proves the rule, that this is an exception. This one is a bit interpretive, because this is what they say there. So let me read you the passage as they put it. To know this, to know that the mind is eternal and unchangeable, but the body is perishable, to know this is called to have become free of life and death. Those who know this principle stop the past cycle of life and death forever, and when this body passes, they enter the spirit world. And the word he's translating as the spirit world, maybe I can show you if you can read that. Those are my notations. Is shokai. Those of you listening on audio won't see this, but you're not missing much. You're just missing my badly written Chinese characters. And Nishijima and Cross in their translation, not this book, but the much longer book, give the translation of that as essence ocean. So shokai. So actually, in this case, the Kazuaki Tanahashi version is more literal, and the Nishijima Cross is more interpretive. I don't know why they make it spirit world. But let's see what Nishijima Roshi has to say about that. In ancient India, this is Nishijima Roshi, there was a very powerful religion called Brahmanism. So this is basically what people colloquially call Hinduism these days. Although there's a lot of controversy, and I don't want to get into the weeds there about whether the word Hinduism is legit or not. I know a lot of Indian people call it Hinduism, so, there you go. The followers of Brahmanism, aka Hinduism, like the philosopher Shrenika, believed that even if the physical body dies, the mind will survive in another world. But in Buddhism, we believe in the oneness of body and mind. We believe in the oneness of spirit and matter. Therefore, according to Buddhist theory, it is impossible for us to suppose that when our physical body dies in this world, our mind will be reborn in another world. And he quotes Dogen as saying, if we equate the present wrong view that mind is eternal but forms perish with the splendid dharma of the Buddhas, thinking that we have escaped life and death when we are promulgating the original cause of life and death, are we not being stupid? That would be most pitiful. Dogen gets pretty belligerent sometimes in his writings. And so he's basically saying it's a dumb thing to say. And Nishijima Roshi goes on, Master Dogen insists that no matter how pleasing or comforting they may be, ideas have in themselves no power to save us from the stern realities of life. Thus, merely to adopt some theory or idea is not the Buddhist way. Buddhism is very practical. Buddhism aims for salvation in this life, not in some other world. Buddhist theory reflects this practical, realistic approach. And he says, Master Dogen contrasts the Buddhist idea of oneness of body and mind with the spiritual ideas of other religions. He denies the idea that the body and mind can exist separately from each other, and that after the body dies, the mental spirit can live on in another world. And then he gets into a little Q&A, Nishijima Roshi does. And let me read you some of that. Here's a good question. Who knows who posed this? Maybe it was Mike Lutchford. He posed a lot of questions in those lectures. Maybe it was me. I don't know. Near the end of his answer, Master Dogen talks about one mind. He says all dharmas, myriad phenomena, and accumulated things are totally just the one mind without exclusion or disunion. Basically, he's echoing what Huangpo says in the teachings, the Zen teachings of Huangpo, which I read from recently. Was it yesterday? I don't remember. Anyway. The questioner says, I get confused when I hear this kind of statement. It feels very abstract. Could you talk about the meaning of one mind more concretely? And Nishijima Roshi says, this idea is similar to idealism. From the idealistic point of view, the whole world is phenomena which is seen or perceived by us, that is, by the mind. Therefore, the mind is said to be the cause of all phenomena. Buddhism accepts and utilizes the idealistic viewpoint about the mind as the first phase of Buddhism's philosophical system. Therefore, when we consider the world on the basis of the first phase, i.e. on the basis of the idealistic viewpoint, we can think of that the whole world is only one mind, the whole world being the whole universe. And here he says, Master Dogen uses these words, body and mind, to explain the same basic principle, that is, the principle of the two concepts body and mind, or essence and form, which are not real divisions but artificial distinctions we make with our intellect. Buddhism says that the universe is something that cannot really be described with words. We can call it ineffable. But when people study the ineffable universe intellectually, they usually divide it into two parts, something spiritual and something material. Then, depending on our orientation, we can draw different conclusions about which of the two divisions is the fundamental basis of reality. And basically, he goes on to say that neither one of these views is the fundamental basis of reality, that reality includes both mind and matter, and that when it's viewed from one point of view, it seems to be all matter and mind is negligible, and when we look at it from the other way, it seems to be all mind and matter is negligible. So that's what he's talking about. Now, this gets very tricky, because when I first heard Nishijima Roshi say this, my immediate understanding of it was that he was basically taking, that Nishijima Roshi and Master Dogen, by extension, were basically taking a materialistic outlook. Like, when you die, you die. It's there's no mind separate from matter. It's all nothing, and yeah, no future, as Johnny Rotten told us in 1976 or whatever. It's not quite like that. So but it is tricky, because this idea of when you die, you fall back into the ocean of consciousness and it's a happy return is a bit idealistic, because it's denying the material side of reality and saying that the only thing that matters is the mental or spiritual side of reality, the idea side of reality. So it's not quite like that, but it's not quite the other thing. So I'd like to read you a little quotation from Nisargadatta Maharaj, who is an Advaita Vedanta teacher. I almost said philosopher. I guess he's kind of a philosopher. He was. Anyway, it's not Dogen, and I don't know if Dogen would disagree with this, but I think this kind of gets into the issue, so I'm going to read you what he had to say. He said, consciousness needs a vehicle and an instrument for its manifestation. When life produces another body, another knower comes into being. Just as the knower of the body appears at birth, so he disappears at death. Life remains. Is there a link? There is something that may be called the memory body or causal body, a record of all that was thought, wanted, and done. It is like a cloud of images held together. There is no compulsion to be reborn. You get what you want. You make your own plans and you carry them out. Desires are strong. It is desire that causes repetition of birth and death. There is no recurrence when desire is not. So yeah, we're getting into the weeds here, and I usually give myself 20 minutes to try to explain these things, and it's really inadequate. But the idea that one just falls back into the ocean of consciousness where everything is okay again would probably, to Dogen's mind, negate cause and effect, and would say that that cause and effect are irrelevant. And in the case of what's going on in the TV show, and this is mild spoiler alert if you haven't watched all of White Lotus, but I don't think this is a major spoiler because it comes out in the first episode. The dad has done some bad things. We never get to find out exactly the details of what they are, but they're pretty bad. And we can assume that they're criminal because he's getting threatened with being sent to prison. And he hears this teacher say this, and he gets the idea, another spoiler alert, that if he dies, then he'll just go back into the ocean of consciousness, which will be a happy return home and everything will be fine. Dogen is pretty explicit that this isn't an option. That you don't escape from your own deeds. And yeah, we're getting so tricky here. To try to explain how Buddhism doesn't accept the idea of this eternal immortal soul that lives in your body and then departs when you die, and then in the Christian version it goes to heaven or hell, in the Hindu version it gets reincarnated. Buddhism doesn't accept this idea of the eternal soul that migrates from body to body. So you can't have that idea. And also Dogen clearly emphasizes this idea of deep belief in cause and effect, and an idea of cause and effect that extends even beyond death. So dying doesn't get you out of the loop of cause and effect. But who is you, is the question. I think one way to answer that is the illusion of your being a separate entity doesn't stop the moment your body dies. But that doesn't mean it's not an illusion. Or to put it without the double negatives, it means it's still an illusion. And that would be the way he puts it. And that would be a more Buddhist way of putting things. Now, whether you want to believe the Buddhist way or the Hindu way, or whether you want to believe the materialistic view, which is you just die and everything goes to blank, like a TV set being turned off and nothing is there, or what is it Carl Sagan said, old computers, when they stop functioning, they're just, I don't know. There's a quote, like it's an old computer that stopped functioning and then there's just nothing else left. You can take any of these views, and it's no skin off my teeth which one you choose. But I just thought it was good to make the point that what the character of the Buddhist master is saying in the White Lotus is not, in season 3 of the White Lotus, is not quite the Buddhist view, and that the Buddhist view is much trickier than that. There's a whole thing, if you really want to study it up, go look for Yogacara philosophy. I think the best book I know of is, I believe, called Understanding Yogacara, and if it's not called Understanding... In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to have Brad in the future, when he goes to edit this, splice in the title of the book, because I can't remember. But there is a good book out there in English about Yogacara philosophy, and it's called... Hey, Brad in the future, tell me what it's called. Thank you, Brad of the past. The book is not, in fact, called Understanding Yogacara. It is called Living Yogacara, and the author is Tagawa Shun-e, and it comes from Wisdom Publications. So, Living Yogacara by Tagawa Shun-e. Thank you, Brad in the future. I'm glad you knew the answer, because I didn't. So, if you want to study that stuff and how the Buddhists justify the idea of a continuity beyond death which doesn't involve a soul passing from body to body, that's a good way, that's a good place to start. You probably still won't understand it, because I didn't understand it either. Myself, I'm, as always, a bit of an agnostic on these things. There have been enough little hints that I've picked up during my practice of Zazen that makes me believe that, I like to put it this way, that the way I think of myself and the way I think of the universe that I inhabit is wrong, and that it may in fact be impossible to make the right way of understanding the universe fit into this brain. The human brain just can't deal with it, because it's not made to deal with it. It's made to help the human body get through life, to find food to eat and clothes to wear and, you know, whatever else you need, shelter and Dwayne Eddy records and all that stuff. But it isn't meant to help us understand the ultimate nature of reality. So any explanation, and this is something that Nishijima Roshi emphasizes quite strongly in this book, any notion, including the Buddhist notions of what the ultimate nature of reality is, are going to be wrong. But there are some explanations that are less wrong than others. And so this is what Dogen and people like that have endeavored to put forward in their careers. And there you go. I don't know if I've explained anything or not, but I've talked enough, and that's about where I'm going to finish. Okay, if you want to donate to me talking about this stuff some more, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, or if you're listening to this, you're about to hear me say with my mouth, and it is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That's where you can find my PayPal and Patreon links, and those are my main and usually my only ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support, but as always, you don't gotta support me if you don't want to. Alright, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Okay, 2 dog cameos for the price of 1. For the next week or so, we are minding Fico. Hello, Fico. Fico is my sister-in-law's dog, and Ziggy, because they went on vacation. So there you go. Maybe I'll get more double dog cameos for you in the coming week. All right. Let's go inside, guys, and edit the video, okay?